Today, as part of this session, I'll give you a quick demo and walk you through some of the core capabilities of Asset Management X. So let's get started. The first module that I'm going to touch is Service Asset and Configuration Management. This natively included asset and configuration management gives you an overview of assets in your organization, conveniently grouped into asset cards by type. Plus, you can see how any asset in your portfolio is contributing to critical business service delivery to help you plan a retirement or a replacement strategy. For this demo purpose today, let's deep dive into one specific asset card and look into what exactly is happening in there. So I'm going to choose an asset card of type servers, which belongs to devices. As I click into it, I land into this table view of all my assets, which are of subtype server. Additionally, you can see that I have filtered this list out by face ID, which includes new, awaiting delivery, receive, in stock, or return to maintenance. You can create your own filters. Like you could filter out by acquisition dates or acquisition types. You can choose your brand, CI type, so you can create any filter as you like. You can create up to 10 filters in this module. Additionally, one of the very important thing that you could do is generate reports out of this list. You could export reports in CSV or XLS formats. You can also create a schedule to email these reports to a list of participants. I'm going to choose one particular asset out of this list so that we can deep dive and understand how this asset lifecycle is managed end to end and also understand how other components like your contracts or your financials are linked to an asset. For that purpose, I'm going to choose one specific asset, which is the server of S and the name SERV02SD015. As I click into it, I'm landed into this dashboard, which gives me an overview of the server, like who's the owner of the server, what model does it belong to, which location is it deployed in, what environment is it in, what is the asset tag that is associated with it. I can also see if the device is a virtual device or a physical device. Other details of the device, like the global ID, the brand, the installation date, the support that it has, all of that is available in here. You can also see when the retirement is planned out. If it's a shared device that is being used by multiple users, you can add a list of users who are sharing those devices and manage it accordingly. You can also manage all the maintenance and warranty contracts if the device is subscribed to any from in here. You could see the maintenance and warranty end dates and manage those contracts from in here. I'm going to quickly walk you through those contracts in a second, but just before I do that, I wanted to show you other functionalities or the other capabilities of the module that will help you manage your end-to-end asset lifecycle. There's a workflow that is associated with the device. This workflow that you're seeing helps you understand which phase of the life cycle is the asset in. Of course, this is available out of the box through our solution. It is divided into phases and metaphases. Right now, as you see, the device is in the meta phase of in use and is currently in use. But you can create your own phases and metaphases in our studio if you think this is something that doesn't completely satisfy your asset management lifecycle. It's pretty easy. It's just basically a GUI format which helps you create this. You can also manage all the hardware and the software information that is associated with this device. Like I can see all the CPU information that is in here, all the file system information. You can also manage all the running software that is on the device from in here. Uh, you can see and manage all the related CIs with the CI topology to understand how the CIs are connected and how they're being used. So you can see all the related CIs in here, like this particular one has a composition of and is running on both of these different servers. So that is how you can manage all the related devices or related CIs from in here. Also, you could manage all the financial information that is associated with this device, like what cost type is the device, what cost center is the device belonging to make your budgeting decisions, what is the acquisition types, is it a purchase or a rental or a leased or a loan device, if there is any chargeback rules that are associated with this device that will enable any creation of chargebacks on the particular device. Additionally, if there's any depreciation that is associated with that device, that could also be managed from in here. You can create expense lines from in here if there's a chargeback, if this device is part of a subscription, which is going to be used by other parts of your organization. You could definitely create your expense lines from in here, and that will help you understand how much of what is the expense in managing the device. I will walk you through expense lines in a second and show you how you can do both incurred as well as predicted expense lines. But going back to what we was talking about, contract management of this device, like I said, you could manage different types of contracts that are associated. Like for this particular device, I have a maintenance contracts. So let me go ahead and show you the contract that is associated, and let's see how that contract lifecycle is managed and how you could see that contract associated with it. As we land into this contracts, we're treated with a contract dashboard, which gives an overview of the contract by itself and its life cycle. So we could see the name of the contract number, the vendor it belongs to, when is it effective from, and when is the contract expiring on. If it has any parent contracts, that could also be seen in here. We could also see the financial information that is associated with this contract, like the price, the recurring cost, the currency, the payment time terms, the cost center it belongs to, the cost type it belongs to, and all of that. You could set your own notification periods to get reminders on the contract expiration. Right now I set a reminder for 60 days and then 30 days, so I get two notifications 60 days and 30 days before my contract expires. I choose this contract to be an automatically renewed contract, but also said that you could cancel the renewal 30 days before. You can also add any attachments that are related to this contract, like if you have any attachments that are associated. Let's go ahead and look into the workflow of the contract. The contract by itself has a workflow that is associated with it. Right now, this particular contract is in the meta phase of active and it's an execute. Later, it would go to close once the contract is closed. But of course, again, this is completely configurable and you could create your own phases and meta phases as you seem fit for your organization. You could also manage all the related contracts that are associated, like if it has a parent contract, you could see the parent contract, you could see all the related contracts that are associated with it. Any TNCs could be put in here. Also, any financial information that is related to this contract could be put in here, like if this contract is being used by multiple devices and it generates an expense lines, you could manage all of that from here. Of course, there's a history for audit purposes to track changes that is happening on that particular contract. So this by itself is the contract life cycle, and we could see all the different things that are associated with the contract. Additionally, you have an other view if you go into the contract management homepage by itself, and that view gives you an overview of all contracts by its state. Like you could see the 4 contracts that are expiring this month versus there are 3 contracts that are expiring in the next 3 months. You could see what is coming effective into next month. So this gives you a summary or a dashboard view of your entire contract homepage. Now let's go back into our specific device and see the other components that are associated with the device. That we have seen the contract and how it's associated with the device, how you could manage a contract or add more contracts to this particular device. Let's go ahead and look into the financials that are associated with this contract. So as we have seen before, this contract has a depreciation and the residual value of 600. So let's go ahead and deep dive into financial management and understand. The financial management module in Asset Management X will help you understand how assets and budgets, cost centers, budget lines, and expense lines intersect, as well as how assets depreciate over time with net value stimulations. So this particular depreciation, we could see the residual value, the residual value date. You could also see how the depreciation terms are calculated, the basis for the depreciation scheme. This is linear. You could choose geometric or sum of digits. The depreciation duration and the date when the depreciation starts. You could see all assets that are basically using this particular depreciation, like our particular server, SERV02 SD015 is also linked to it. Apart from managing depreciation, you can really do some very cool things with financial management. It is particularly very helpful to understand your budget allocated versus spends. So let's go ahead and look into budgets for that purpose and see how budget allocations and spends work together. So this gives you an overview of all budgets in your organization, however you configure it. For our particular example, I'm going to pick the Micro Focus R&D's 2022 budget. As I land into this budget, I could see, what budget center it belongs to, what specific code it has. I can also see all the budget lines that are associated with this particular budget. This particular expense versus budget analysis chart will provide me a quick and easy way to see my budget status of this particular status. You can also review the budget remaining in each quarter and future quarters to determine how many licenses or how many purchase decisions could you do without asking for any additional budget. For example, if you look at software Q3, I could see that there's a remaining budget of 42,000. Probably this will help me make my purchase decisions to procure additional servers very easily. Along with managing your budgets, depreciations, costs, and cost centers, you can also get an in-depth view of your expenses and how expenses are incurred at a cost center level. Let's go ahead and look into it. For this purpose, I'm going to go into my expense lines. So this expense lines gives me an overview of all expenses that are incurred in my organization, grouped at a cost center level. Let's go ahead and filter it out by particular cost center to better understand the spend. I'm going to choose cost center MF CIO office. I'm going to group by that. So right here you can see all the expense lines that are incurred on MFCIO office. You can see they're both debit and credit expense lines. If you have any subscriptions which would generate some revenue on top of it, that is also available here. You can see the cost type, if it's service or hardware or IT infrastructure, whatever you have defined it to be. You could see the cost parent type, what is incurring it, like this particular contract is a debit, whereas this device is actually creating a credit. Also, one of the really interesting thing that you can do with expense lines is this helps you to determine both incurred as well as your projected expense lines. So what that does is basically with your projected lines, you can really understand how your budgets would behave in the next quarter or next fiscal so that you could plan your expenses accordingly. This is pretty much about your expense lines that are triggered, but what really defines and triggers these expense lines is defined under cost allocation rules. So using the cost allocation module inside financial management, you can go ahead and create those triggers for your expense lines or what generates your expense lines. Let's go ahead and look into one particular cost allocation rule. I'm just going to pick a cost allocation rule which is of type expense allocation. It could also be a chargeback when you define it, and the parent type is contract. So it's filtered by whatever is executed. That's what this cost allocation rule filters. And you could define a start date and end date too if it's a time box kind of a cost allocation rule. And of course, there's an allocation section which defines how it's allocated, like you would need the initial payment, your currency. If there's a recurring cost, then you define the recurring cost and you see what is the debit cost center and credit cost center. All of these, if you don't define all of these in this section, the system automatically defines it based on the studio rules or how it's configured, but you can go ahead and create your own rules from here. So that's pretty much about your financial management and all the real cool things that you can do using financial management inside Asset Management X. Now that we have looked into asset configuration management and looked at how contracts and financials work with assets, let's go ahead and see how to bring in this assets or inventory through our procurement module into stock to facilitate that asset lifecycle. For that purpose, I'm going to go into our procurement module. The procurement module inside Asset Management X
helps facilitate and manage IT purchase decisions. This is basically an integrated solution from where you could create your vendor catalogs or catalog items and publish them as service offerings. You could manage purchase orders, receiving items and slips, and also perform stock management, all through automated processes. If your organization is using an external procurement system like say SAP, you can complement that with procurement module inside Asset Management X to quickly move assets into stock. Just to run through a use case and understand this module much better, let's go ahead and create a purchase order. I'm going to say that I'm running out of HP Blade servers and I'm going to add more. So I'm going to go into my purchase orders, click on new, create a new purchase order. Let's call it HP Blade servers. I'm going to choose the vendor HP and click on save and edit. So this takes me to my purchase order page. So this is the purchase order I just initiated. I'm doing it with a manual type. Let's go ahead and create a new purchase order line item. So I'm going to create a new purchase order line item. I'm going to say I need some integrity BL CE blades, and I'm going to choose a quantity of 20 from vendor HP and click on save. So this created my new purchase order line. I'm going to quickly go back to my workflow and issue this purchase order so that this purchase order is issued and ready to receive items. So I'm going to move it into a stage of issued. So this is issued. I'm going to save my purchase order. So that's pretty much it. I have created and issued a purchase order and saved it. Let's go back to purchase orders. So this is the purchase order we just created and this is in a status of issued. Now that I have issued my purchase order, let's say we received or we are about to receive an item and we're creating receive slip for that. So let's go into receiving slips and create a new receiving slip. For a use case, we will do this manually, but this could be done in an automated way. If you're using any integrations, you can avoid all this process and bring your data or your received items directly through integration from a procurement system like SAP. Let's go ahead and say that I partially received some of those items. For that purpose, I'm going to go ahead and create a new purchase order. So I choose the purchase order HP Blade servers. My receiving slip title is HP Blade servers received. I'm going to move it to stockroom, Phoenix stockroom B. Let's say we partially received those items. So I'm going to choose the device asset type as device and the subtype as server because the server blades. And I'm going to say that I received 10 of these server blades and click on OK. I'm going to save this. And that's pretty much it. We received 10 items. Let's go into receiving lines and see. This is the one that we just received and we received 10 of those. Now that we finished the purchase ordering and receiving, let's go into stockroom, Phoenix stockroom B and see if we received this item or what's happening with those items, if they're in stock or not. So I'm going to go back into service asset and configuration management. I'm going to go into my stock management, choose Phoenix stockroom B because that's where we received these items, and go into assets and stock. And as you can see, we just received 10 of these. So from here, now you could start your asset lifecycle processes like issue these assets to somebody or make reservations on top of these assets. So this is pretty much about procurement management and how you could actually initiate the entire process and manage right from your asset purchase order creations to receiving those items and easily moving them into stock. Again, just to re-emphasize, all of this could be done in a more automated fashion. I just choose a manual way so that I could demo this more efficiently. Now that we have looked into asset lifecycle management and all the components that are associated with it, like your procurement management or your financial management, your contract or your vendor management, let's look at the other side of it where you could really manage your softwares or software compliance to ensure that you're ready for any vendor audits that are related to your software licenses or deployments. So all of that happens inside software asset management. As you land into software asset management, you're treated with this dashboard. This dashboard gives you an overview of all deployments in your organization, including the compliance status and the most at-risk products assessed based on the latest compliance reports. So as you can see, you could see the compliance trends in your organization for the past 6 months. You could see what are the top 5 products at risk where you really don't have the required number of licenses, or what are the top 5 products that you're overspending where you really have more licenses but less consumption. This will actually help you make all those purchase decisions wisely. As of today, we support out-of-the-box vendors including Adobe, Microsoft, Oracle, and VMware. We also let you bring in your consumption information through IBM ILMT or through SCCM deployments. So we let you bring in that information into software asset management to calculate the compliance and ensure that you have the right licenses. As this dashboard gives you an overview of all products or all vendors in your organization, you can dig into vendor specific dashboards. Like if I go into my Oracle dashboard, this Oracle dashboard gives me an overview of my Oracle consumption in the organization. Like we have my compliance meters, we can see the trends in the past 6 months. You have the compliance, database compliance, like for example, in your enterprise, you have 32 license points available versus 16 consumed. In your standard version, you don't have any consumption, whereas you have 2 availability. Similarly, you could look at your Oracle data options or your PACS compliance. You could see how many data licenses are required. You could see what is the utilization of database options and PACS. So you could manage all that information for every vendor. This basically gives you an overview of how your compliance is being managed, so that if there's any audit that is coming up, you can efficiently respond to it. One other really cool thing about Oracle specifically is we're vendor certified by Oracle. What that means is you could leverage the data that you're seeing here and generate reports out of SAM from in here and directly give it to your vendor. You don't need to really massage it or do anything on top of it. You can just take this data and use it in your vendor audits. As this gives an overview of all the spends or all products or all vendors, we also have another view in our compliance dashboard. So as you go into a compliance menu, you could see that there are compliance cards for each product at a product level. This is managed both for on-prem as well as your SaaS installations. For example, if I look at my SQL Server, I can see that the status of non-compliant, I could see what is the cost of making it compliant and how many versions of that product are deployed. Let's go ahead and look into this card specifically to understand the level of in-depth that we provide or the information that you could really gather from the compliance menu. So as I go into my SQL Server deployment, I can see that there are 4 versions of it, and I could see the available license points versus consumed license point and what is the cost of compliance. If I look at my SQL Server 2019 standard deployment, I have a consumption of 16 points, whereas the availability of 0 license point. That means I'm overutilizing the licenses, and the cost to make it compliant is 128K. You can also dig a level deeper to understand what devices in the SACM module are actually consuming these licenses. For example, I have 3 devices in here which is consuming my SQL Server 2017 Enterprise, and you could see how the calculation is made, like the consumption points versus points allocated. So if you click on this device, this actually takes you to the SACM physical device that we looked a second back. So this is what happens under your compliance, and this is where you could generate all those reports. You could filter out, you could create your own filters by products or by versions, and you can download those reports. Let's take a step back and really look at where the real magic happens. So how the compliance is calculated and managed. So all of that happens in your products menu. As you land into products menu, you could see all the products that are deployed in your organization. This data that you're seeing here comes from UCMDB. This is an automatic sync, so you really don't have to worry about if the data is real time or not, because all of this is a real time sync that happens. So you could see all the deployments or all the consumption that is being happening in your organization. As I said, this is an automatic sync, so you always have access to the most latest information or the most right information. But of course, you could create a manual sync from CMS if it is needed, or you could create a scheduler to actually push information from CMS. Again, this is for both on-prem as well as your SaaS deployments. Let's go ahead and look into one specific product and see how that license rules and all of that are applied on this product, and understand the consumption calculation. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue with using SQL Server because that is what we picked in the last example. So as I go into my SQL Server, I can see all the versions that are being deployed. I could see if it's a production environment or not, if it's a managed product or not. So at the same time, you could see license rules that are being applied on this product. So each version can have its own license rule, or you can have one license rule per product. It is completely up to the organization or how they work with. So for all the products or all the vendors that we support out of the box, like your Adobe or your Microsoft or your Oracle or VMware, we provide license rules also out of the box, and they're updated periodically. But of course, you have the ability to customize those license rules if your consumption is in a different process. We really have one other interesting feature, which is called as license compatibility metrics. The main purpose of the license compatibility metrics is to ensure that you have right number of licenses and utilizing the right number of licenses. For example, if you have 2019 enterprise licenses and 2017 enterprise licenses, and if you're out of 2019 enterprise licenses, what you're saying here is, okay, use my 2017 licenses instead. So this is for both downgrade as well as upgrade paths. You could either use one level up or one level down, and this is basically a GUI that you can drag and drop and create those licenses or create those metrics or the tree charts. So this is how your licenses or your license compliances are calculated. We take the consumption information from UCMDB. We apply license rules on the available license points and calculate the compliance from products that you're seeing on those compliance dashboards. Let's go ahead and look into licenses, license rules, and license metrics just to give an overview of how really things work. So I'm going to start with license metrics. So we do have license metrics per vendor, and as I said, again, for all the products that we support out of the box, we provide you license metrics, but you can always create your own license metrics or license rules. So these are all the available license metrics per vendor that we have. Similarly, we also have license rules. The license rules that you're seeing here again are provided out of the box, and they're updated periodically with every release to ensure that we are using the right methods to calculate the compliance. You could go ahead and create your own license rules or clone license rules or edit the script and make changes on it and just validate the script before actually moving it into production or applying it against a product. We also store all the available licenses or the licenses purchased information under our licenses module. So this licenses module shows you an overview of all the licenses that are purchased in the organization. You could import this data in multiple ways. You could have an API integration to bring in this data, or you could do a CSV update of the available licenses or the manual update. So you could choose any of the methods to actually bring information about the available licenses into the system from in here. Let's go ahead and just look into one particular license and see how or what you could really do with it. So again, you could put the total number of rights. You can have an asset tag if there's any. You could have an owner. You could put a license model. If there are any contracts associated with the license, again, you can have those license contracts associated in here. License has its own workflow. It could be new, or it's received, or it could be a pool license. All of that. You could manage all the workflow of that license from in here. So that's pretty much about software asset management and how compliance is calculated. Of course, you could export all the reports that you're seeing in here into your CSVs or your Excel exports to manage the compliance and share those compliance dashboards. But the dashboards really give you a quick overview of your software compliance and how actually consumption is being happening in your organization.